All right, we're live.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Meyer from GAI Insights, and welcome to our daily Gen AI executive briefing, where we rate articles essential, important, or optional for companies. Let us know if you're interested in a daily email summary of this with our rationale, as we have that new service available as well. Today's briefing is sponsored by GAI Insights, and discussion will be led by David.
All right, thanks, Paul. Good morning, everybody. Good evening to you, Adam, who will be talking about this first article, which is an announcement of another raise of funding. This is by, I assume you pronounce it Quadrant, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I suspect it's Quadrant would be my guess.
That's what I thought, but I'm
Maybe
like...
Quadrant, yeah.
Yeah, but they left out the U and the A, so
It's
I
true,
thought
they did.
They did it on purpose.
We'll let Adam decide.
Yeah, Adam, you let us know. I hadn't heard of this company before. I guess they provide a vector database. Adam, what do you think about this? I mean, I know already that you're going to think, obviously, the fact that they raised money is not important, but I'm just wondering if you're familiar with their offering and how it might compare to some others.
I'm not. I won't even try and pronounce it. I guess I'd probably say Quadrant or Quadrant. I don't know. Even in the article itself, it highlights quite a few other companies who've recently raised 50 million, 60 million, 18 million. Pinecone, the leader in the space, raising 100 million. This is optional news. It's another fundraise in a competitive space. It's no surprise.
And what about, Adam, it said that this is especially good for processing real-time data, and it said that X is a client, which would make sense because they're processing real-time data off of X/Twitter. Is that novel at all, or is that kind of like standard for these products?
I honestly couldn't say so much. I haven't gotten so deep into it. I know that what X is trying to do with the real-time grok processing, all of the voice, all of the text on their platform, is a tremendous engineering effort, and I know it's requiring some new solutions. That's interesting, but they're a new player in the space, so it's going to be a while till I think we really see anything coming from that.
Yeah, previously a slightly new technique, but vector databases and embeddings are still a fairly new space. Not super new, but fairly new, especially in a use with large language models. So they convinced X to use it, but lots of people sell lots. Everybody's got one big enterprise customer if they're raising money.
So what attracted me in this article, I agree that this is optional, but what is interesting, they are compacting the things that they're representing quite tightly, so that it would reduce the cost and speed up the comparisons of the data. So this was interesting. It seems like that's why they might have gotten money as a differentiator, but we'll see. You're right.
All right, optional it is. Shall we move on?
Okay. The next one is from IBM. So IBM, through its watsonx Gen AI platform, they have helped Sevilla FC transform their player recruitment process.
So I didn't know who was our soccer fan here when I assigned this article, but Tim, I picked you out. I thought maybe.
I know a little bit about soccer, but I can't say I'm anything like the rest of the world where this is the most popular sport there is. But in fact, to me, this is optional. It's really interesting and maybe important in the trend again. I've been sort of saying 2024 is going to be the year of production. It's another significant organization doing a production deployment in a critical path. This is scouting for players, about as critical as it gets if you're a major league sports team. And that's what they're doing. On the other hand, if we think about it, that's one of the earliest and most well-trodden use cases for generative AI, generating job descriptions, evaluating people for skills and jobs. And this is just another layer on top of that. In fact, my guess is this is 99%, dare we call it legacy AI already. natural language processing and machine learning of the sort that we do to sort out optimization of various parameters, and then maybe 5% actual generative AI, because I don't know exactly what the LLM models are doing that normal AI that we used even 5 years ago couldn't do in terms of sorting out players here. But it's interesting, and I think the bigger deal is this is a major team deploying this in production. And it's obviously a big marketing thing, I'm sure, for IBM, because this is the first one we've seen from IBM that's getting some attention.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is, like we saw this week in the Learning Lab, where the use case was 700 resumes, tell me the top 5 candidates for this job. I'm becoming more skeptical when you have such variance from what potentially ground truth was. So in that recruiting one, I think you take 5 recruiters who would still not agree on the top 5 resumes. And I think from player recruitment, the same thing. Companies would or organizations would disagree who the best players are. I think that's completely different than having 5 experts on Southwest Airlines figure out what the best customer response is to an answer. So I
would respectfully disagree, Paul.
Excellent.
And throw tomatoes your way, because sports is one place where there is, in general, some ground truth. Now, again, you have to develop the ground truth. This is the story of Moneyball, if you remember that from baseball. It's the story of strokes gained in golf. And these are very powerful and actually do enable you to use powerful machine learning and statistics to single out players who are likely to do better. It's a very constrained world. I agree with you about recruiting because it's so unconstrained. But sports, in fact, is a very closed and constrained world with very strict rules and lots of data.
But that's all structured data, though, right? I understand the structured data analysis.
Right, but it turns out that most people overestimate how much, in sports at least, the unstructured, the eye of the scout matters. If you look at Moneyball, they just killed everybody by just developing new measures of statistics. Nothing about scouts looking at how fast a person runs or throws, but literal statistics. And the same is true in every major sport at this point, for the most part.
I just have one quick comment on this. So I mentioned in the Learning Lab as well, I did a small study on ATS, so that basically using algorithm-based tools in the recruitment process, right? And I looked at individuals who had a background in AI. And my study pretty much showed, and it was small, but it pretty much showed that everybody hated it, is the long and short of it. So I think even though it makes sense, I still think we're going to get human pushback. So that's just based on what I saw, but I still think they're not going to
the human pushback in sports with sports scouts. I mean, it took years and years to convince sports scouts and a lot of people in business to use analytics. Like, they're very old school, especially in baseball. But we seem to have turned a bit of a corner with it. Yeah,
humans always, don't want to be subject to being classified by statistics. But again, the difference with sports is the relationship between these statistics and performance is easily measurable. The reason that the statistics eventually won in baseball is because the team started winning all the time and doing it for less money. And it was easy. It was obvious because every season there's lots of games and there's yeses and nos to all the questions. Yeah. So that's the reason it eventually takes over in sports, because it's a closed world and the relationship is very straightforward. In recruiting for jobs, it is much less straightforward, much more difficult.
Right. I love this conversation, as I'm a huge sports fan, but we'll move on for the sake of time. Thanks, everybody. What's next, Ankaj?
Okay. The next one is from Google. So Google has made some Gen AI updates to the Chrome browser.
Yeah, and we'll just combine this article with the next one, Ankaj, because they actually are both kind of talking about the same thing. This just one of them expands on some of the points made in the other one. Amanda, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think this is mostly PR than anything. I think some of them are interesting. Like in the first article, it mentions tab organizer, text assist. customizable browser themes. I guess in the second one, it talks about creating search campaigns. So I think that could be interesting for business. So if I had to pick one and say you have to pick one that's important maybe over another, I'd pick the second one about the Gemini-powered conversational tool helps advertisers. But again, I think this is, in my opinion, a lot of PR. So both could be optional. But definitely, I'd say the first one's probably more optional than the second article.
Any other thoughts? Adam, I thought I saw you rank one of these important this morning.
Yeah, I think I hadn't really considered the significance of Chrome in terms of Google's strategy. And for that point, I felt it was important. I went and did a little research. The desktop and the mobile market, Chrome has 2/3 of the market share.
Yeah.
And even in the tablet market where Apple dominates, they have half of the market share. So this is significant in terms of Google's ability to just put AI in the hands of a lot of people. And this is the strategy that they can just keep building on and just keep adding use cases and just giving people more and more reasons to stay in their Chrome browser and using Google for their machine learning needs and large language models. So I rate it as important for that reason.
Yeah, me too. Not so much in the substance of what's there, but if you're an AI leader, there's going to be a big conversation about which of the vendors and so forth. I think you really have to stay up to speed. And Microsoft's coming out from the applications, Chrome's coming in from the browser, that is coming in from the mobile experience. I think it's going to be interesting. So I'd rate it as important for mostly the market share statistics they have.
Just on the footnote side, I've had 2 briefings from startups in the last week and a half. One was helping consumer brands monitor their brand view in all these large language models. And the other one is using chatbots for conversational commerce. So you actually start having a conversation with the ad that then kicks out a coupon. And both of them are getting a lot of interest. And it's interesting. That's a whole new wave of innovation that this is coming from. Kind of banner ads drive them to your website.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about whoever's first in the demand chain wins. That's why Google's done so well. And then you think about advertising as a particular presentation format for a financial incentive, if you will. You know what I mean? And if you think of that as a container, and that then can be anywhere, it could be a coupon, could be an ad, could be a referral. You know what I mean? That becomes a currency, and these things allow you to place that currency in different parts of the demand chain. It's a totally, I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, and John, you talked a couple of weeks ago, a month or so ago, we talked about how Walmart was running out. Hey, I'm doing a Super Bowl party. Show me what I should do. The one they showed me on shopping was very interesting. I've got a prom coming up. Show me dresses that look like this. That are, literally like you would talk to a sales assistant in person in a show is is what it's. This stuff is changing. Brands need to really wake up on this.
Yeah, when we're teaching the market space course, we said, look, it's going to go from standard industrial codes to standard experience codes. And those experience codes are collectively created. Anyway, yeah.
All right. Sounds like we've gone to important. Can you live with that, Amanda?
Yeah, because I think the second one is with the search. Yeah. It's just the first one with a couple tools I thought was more PR. So yes, I can live with it.
All right. We'll go for important and we'll go on to the next one.
Well, the next one is from Oracle. So Oracle has now fully launched its Oracle Cloud Infrastructure GenAI offering.
All right. Who did I assign this one to?
I don't know, but I wish I could be a fly on the wall in Larry Ellison's yacht. Can you imagine the heads that he's bashing to get people to go out and create this? I mean, my God.
I went with Paul on this one. Paul, I mean, how does this compare to other offerings? And
no, I think it's one, it's a Barney that they announced they're doing. They don't have a customer yet. 2, I think the only thing that's notable is that they weren't doing it. I think so. It's definitely optional. I think I found it interesting. I love the fact that they and others are starting to use practical terms. So they're talking about text generation, summarization, semantic similarity, task. So they're starting to put functional capabilities around this technology. That's the other thing I would note. They're doing Cohere and Meta. They haven't done Mistral. This whole idea that customers want switchability and choice. and all these vendors, cloud vendors, going to have to start providing that. I think RAG opportunity is so massive for all these companies, and it's going to take 10 years for all the companies to get their enterprise to get their basic RAG implementations done. So the fact they're pushing that, I think that's very exciting. And the last thing I would do, John was presenting yesterday to 60 CTOs, and one of the CTOs was complaining about how frustrated he is that his vendors, one, are changing everything in Gen AI, and two, that when they're putting these large language model capabilities in, they're not doing any kind of red teaming on understanding variance and everything else. So this is yet another indication of the mass rush to get something out, but the quality behind it, I think, is still needs to be suspect for our customers. But long-winded answer, still optional.
Optional. Any disagreement?
Nope.
Our thoughts? All right, let's move on to the next one.
Yep. So the next one is from Glean. So they have done a survey on adoption of Gen AI by IT teams, and they have some interesting findings here.
Okay, Luda.
Yeah, I again present two views, and let's get others to vote as well. So I think there are many surveys and many numbers floating around about the implementation and blah, blah, blah. This is one of them. This survey was done at the end of the year, November, I believe, and they just compiled it and releasing it. So it's a little bit dated in some sense. So for that reason, I thought it's optional. However, as we very much know, all the companies that are implementing some pilots or whatever want to know how they are doing and where they stand in terms of implementation. So in essence, the benchmarking of where they stand versus others. So for that reason, I would put it as important. And the other plus on that important is that Glean itself is backed by, or actually created by, really good folks and backed by great backers. So it's a very respected company in what they're doing. And so in that sense, it just adds to potentially important. Other people, other opinions?
Yeah. Who will move us on one side or the other of the fence?
As a guy who used to do these kind of surveys, and I think ours were better.
I was just happy to see that less than half the people thought they were ahead of the pack, because a lot of these surveys, 80% of everybody thinks they're.
But then they were not confident that they were.
I'd say optional. This is attitudinal. This is a relative attitudinal survey, not identified, not a lot of insight, not a lot of analysis. Just it's a crosstab of a lazy researcher.
So that's why I think, okay, let's put it optional.
I think it does put things in perspective, though. One of the figures was, how much of the IT budget that generative AI took up last year and anticipated this year, et cetera. I mean, the percentage is like 2%, and then even out to 2025 is 4.3%. So just a reminder, it's taking up the mind share, but it's certainly not taking up the budget share.
Well, no, that's pretty substantial, actually. And what was now the issue, as John pointed out, is what's the veracity in reality of these numbers, because they didn't do a whole lot of depth of analysis. If those numbers are right, it's actually doubling and tripling over the next couple of years, and they're moving into production rapidly. That is really unusual. So, we'll see. The issue is, can you trust it? So, yeah, I mean, for me, having said, hey, this is a year of production, I can have tons of confirmation bias and say, oh, yeah, this is awesome, because they're saying exactly what I've been saying, but I have no idea if it's true or not.
All right, we'll go optional.
David, if I may, just quick, I want to do a shout out to Christina Bell on Twitter, who's commenting and joining us. So welcome, Christina, and Michael Novak, a longtime regular listener.
Yes, good morning, Michael. Okay, next one, we have an interesting use case, Ankaj.
Yep. So this one is Concrete.ai. So they have launched a copilot called Concrete Copilot. So the major objective is to use GenAI solution to save on the carbon footprint spending of organizations.
Yeah,
John.
I think I rate this as important, maybe essential. And the reason is that it's not that there's anything in the article, but the idea that in our wins framework, somebody is holding a lever. Remember, the folks with a small amount of their cost base is symbolic work, words, images, numbers, and sounds, but it helps lever them into a position. If this works as it claims, and there's no evidence, this is just an announcement. So from that point of view, I agree, Paul, it's a nothing burger. But the idea that, hey, I can differentiate on mix, and mix is a big deal. And mix is a big deal in terms of how, what vendors you select. So, you talk about a high influence point in the purchase of concrete. This is a big deal. And and then, the carbon, obviously the carbon footprint. I think if concrete were a country, it's something like the 5th largest country in terms of carbon output in the world.
Yeah. 8% of the world's emissions comes from
concrete.
Concrete.
Yeah, so
It's a big deal.
Production and everything, and there's no recycling really without energy. So it's you have to recenter that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of cool. And I love concrete. I've laid a lot of concrete and a lot of other stuff. I'm a half-ass concrete guy. So whatever.
I met someone when I was at a conference last year. There's a company in Europe, Carbon Re, that's using not generative AI but other types of AI that to achieve something similar, and it also goes a little bit further in optimization of in the cement world. But there are a decent number of people in the space. It's a big, it's something you don't think about, but it's definitely.
For someone who spent 5 years in state bank, I think what's hard for all these things is when it's a commodity, will customers actually pay? So there's coal companies that tried to have sustainable coal and it still went down in price. We haven't seen much on oil, for instance. I think electricity is an interesting thing on the consumer side. I'm not seeing any company spending more money on that. So it's certainly definitely needed in terms of footprint, but it's really hard to differentiate commodity products and get value for it.
So are we going important or optional?
I rated it as important as a trend, and I was excited about this particular one. In material spaces, like I come out of nutrition materials, right? And we worked also with cement and solar materials. This is a big deal. This is new products quickly, right, that you can test, like enzymes, proteins to replace the chemicals. So this is a pipeline for fast and new product introduction. So for me, it's something where Gen AI, we talk about efficiency in processes. This is opening a new area of new product introduction speed in materials for sure. So that's why, for me, it was an exciting article. And cement is a big deal in terms of.
So sounds like we'll go important on this one. And I know we had one last piece. We said it was optional. It's a bit of a white paper for Menlo Ventures, but obviously a notable VC. Ankaj, thanks for bringing it up. This page is what made me want to bring this up, because I think this is a useful chart for the AI leader to get a grip on the different vendors in each layer of the stack. But I don't know if I'd call this important, but I think it was just something that I think could be helpful, and maybe just an article to put to our folks for a helpful reference.
I agree. I think this, I would probably rate this important. Here's the caveat. The caveat is, remember, these folks are talking their book. They're investing, right? On the other hand, they're right in the thick of things, and they've done a nice job giving some frameworks and rubrics, and so it's. I think you have to read all of them is the problem. So you either have to pick a couple and just realize that they're biased because the investors are talking their book. That is, they're promoting the companies that they've invested in, or you have to read them all, because all of the major venture capitalists do these kind of white papers. and then you start to be able to triangulate into what's really helpful. But they all have these useful things. I agree. The stack stuff is useful, and the maturity curve is useful. They're useful structures to think about.
And Tim, I think it's a highlight as well. One thing we obviously saw in our research for the buyer's guide is that these charts frustrate large enterprises because they don't have their existing vendors on it all. It's a mapping of new shiny objects.
Right. That's the talking the book problem, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they're really trying to get to all the new players because that's who they're invested in. They don't care what Microsoft is doing to a great extent.
And a quick plug for our own maturity curve and benchmarking that's available. That is not one that's influenced by our investments. All right. So we going important on this one, or are we going optional?
No, I would put optional, but maybe a highlight that this is a white paper from AVC, and just a probably worth read, but not important. I'm with Tim. I don't think we want to promote a particular angle.
Okay, so optional with a little bit of usefulness. I think that's the last one for today.
And I think just go back to that, because I think part of my frustration, it doesn't help a company develop a short list. It helps an investor develop a short list of companies developed in the category. It doesn't help a large company figure out who the 2 or 3 I should start looking at to evaluate. So just reemphasizing Luda's point that we're confusing our target customers by emphasizing things like this.
Paul, any announcements you want to share about upcoming events?
None in particular. We had the one thing we sent out and mentioned earlier today was the 8 things that we're seeing through our research and customer actions that top quartile companies are doing. We got a lot of good feedback on that. So that's available in my Substack and off our website. The second thing I'd like to highlight is that we continue to grow our learning lab, and our next learning lab is next Monday at 7:00, where we're getting 50 to 100 people a week to dive into practical ways of using this technology. The topic hasn't been decided, but will be decided next day here or so.
All right. Have a good day, everybody. See you tomorrow.